Get ready for some tech talk over coffee, where we filter through the latest digital tech one sip at a time. Welcome to The Filtered Brew, a tech podcast all about software. Your host is digital consultant Preston Hurd. So join us for a cup of coffee, and let's get into what's brewing on today's menu. This is the first chapter of a four-part series all on document generation software. We will be providing a high-level overview of the category, the world of document generation software, with host Preston Hurd. We've also created a complete buyer's guide on our website, so we'll be sure to include a link to that in the podcast description. This first high-level overview discussion explores how DocGen automation transforms the creation of customized, repeatable documents, such as proposals, contracts, invoices, and reports, by connecting directly with data from Salesforce. Preston breaks down document generation as a category into four key subcategories, explaining how each supports organizations in creating, managing, and securely distributing documents at scale across departments such as sales, operations, and HR. So grab your cup of coffee and let's get started with our first question for Preston. All right, here we go. What are the four categories of document generation?
Thanks, Nick. Great initial overview. I want to add one thing to it, and that is throughout this episode, we're really going to be having a Salesforce focus. So document generation, exactly what you said, we are going to be talking about as it relates to pulling data from Salesforce. Why? Because Salesforce is by far the largest CRM provider in the entire world. There are other customer relationship management CRM softwares out there. There's Microsoft Dynamics, for example, but we're really focused on the Salesforce ecosystem here. And that's because there's a vast variety of apps within this ecosystem, and they extend functionality to just about anything you can think of, including today's topic, DocGen. So let's dive right into it. The first one, the first category, we've broken this down into four different categories, four different buckets. The first one I'm calling document generation automation. You notice I added the word automation to it. These are tools that are focusing on automating the creation of documents. But what kind of documents? Clean, consistent, professional documents. And they're using dynamic data that's pulled in directly from Salesforce, or it could be pulled in from other similar systems. So why is that important? Companies use that for proposals, for contracts, for invoices, for letters. Without manual effort, if it's an automated process, they're able to do that once it's set up with a template with a click of a button. So that's the first category. Number two, and by the way, all of these different categories, all four of them, offer document generation in some way, shape, or form. Electronic signature and digital agreements, e-signature. We've all heard, we've all done e-signature on our mobile devices. These are platforms that specialize in managing signature workflows. There's a lot more to it than just clicking sign on your mobile device. It's the sending, it's the tracking, it's managing contracts that are legally binding agreements for digital acceptance and signature in that whole process. Third, forms and workflow automation. So the third category is really more on the forms side of things. We're talking about the design of the forms, the deployment of these fillable forms. They have fields, how the data is taken in, which can be used and integrated into systems like Salesforce. This is all about capturing structured data in, whether it's an application or it's a customer satisfaction survey or product kickoff questionnaires, and then pushing that data right into Salesforce where it can be leveraged, where it can be used. That can then create other automated workflows to flow that into If it's a customer satisfaction survey and it's something that, was a negative review, well, hey, let's address that right now and turn that into a case and manage it, right? And then the fourth category that we're talking about here is ECM. That's Enterprise Content Management. These are robust systems that have robust capabilities for really focusing on the organization, the storage, the distributing of digital documents and assets. Could be content as well, falling within content management systems, CMS. And these enterprise content management systems provide security, but also accessibility within their framework. So, think about here centralized searchable repositories. I love that word, repositories of all of these signed agreements, these customer assets, the onboarding agreements, all of the tools for then the access to these documents to the right people within the right divisions of companies for the control and then the sharing, certain sharing privileges going along with that as well. So breaking it down, those are the four categories that we're going to be covering at a high level. And then we're going to touch on and really focus on when we get into actual use cases, telling stories about how is this used, the retail industry, brands and retailers specifically, when we dive into it. So we've got some fun kind of ways for you to visualize this high level overview. But that breaks down the four categories, Nick.
One thing I noticed about your overview was that these are four distinctive categories of document generation. However, the first category, document generation automation, sounds very identical to the umbrella category of document generation.
Right.
So, how would you break down the difference between the two?
Well, that was intentional, Nick. You're talking about the overall category of DocGen, right? So the parent category of DocGen, and within that we have these subcategories of all these different areas. The first one, which is the most closely related, we've called document generation automation. All four of these categories include DocGen tools. And that can definitely be confusing, especially since the first category sounds alike, DocGen automation. It has a name that's very similar to the overall parent group. And when I say that's intentional, that's because vendors in this first category are the most directly focused on the automation, automating the actual creation of documents, as compared to, say, e-signature, for example. So we named it that way with a focus. The other three categories that we've looked at, e-signature, forms and workflow automation, and ECM, enterprise content management, they all overlap with DocGen, but their core strengths and the use cases for them are very different. So instead of grouping everyone under one umbrella of DocGen, we split them up based on their primary strengths and where their capabilities really lie. In this way, it's a lot easier to understand how each of these different vendors, because we looked at vendors in each one of these categories, fits into the broader ecosystem.
So, like you said, there's different categories, different use cases, and then there's some overlap between them. What would be the different use cases that each of these categories would address?
I think that'll be helpful for our listeners to see real world stories of brands and retailers, for example. It could be any industry. DocGen is used across practically every industry that I can think of. But looking with the retail spin on things, and I love talking about this, the retail side of things, I think if we look at a couple examples for each one of these categories, it'll really shed some light on like, oh, okay, I get it.
Thanks, Preston. I think your overview of the four types of document generation software for Salesforce will really help the audience get a clear sense of what DocGen is all about. And I'm already looking forward to the next episode where you break down those real world retail examples so we can actually see DocGen in action. And thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Filtered Brew podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and took away some insights that you could apply to your own digital strategy. Be sure to visit thefilteredbrew.com. It's the place to go for the latest software tech insights and where you can find more episodes and additional resources. If you liked what you heard today, don't forget to follow, rate, and share the show. It really helps us grow and reach more listeners like you. This has been the Filtered Brew podcast, where conversations are crafted, refined, and brewed to perfection. Until next time, keep your ideas brewing and visit thefilteredbrew.com.